He said that he pulled her out of the car and realized that she was still breathing.
So what did he tell you he did when he realized she's still breathing?
He said he got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti.
These were the exact words spoken by a horrified biological father while testifying in court. A chilling account that helped expose a modern monster hiding behind a calculated, unsettling smile. The man speaking was Stephen Testaseca. The subject of his testimony was his son, Wade Stephen Wilson. Inside a Lee County, Florida courtroom, the atmosphere grew noticeably colder as his testimony unfolded. Seated at the defense table was a man whose appearance had become a literal canvas of hatred, his face covered in Nazi swastikas and a carved, tattooed grin reminiscent of a comic book villain. But behind this theatrical presentation of madness lay something far more clinical, far more terrifying. A diagnostic psychopathic sadist. Over the course of 12 chaotic, blood-soaked hours in October 2019, this individual turned the quiet streets of Cape Coral and Fort Myers into a personal, predatory hunting ground. Two women, completely unknown to one another, would cross his path. Christine Ann Melton, a vibrant 35-year-old woman whose home should have been her sanctuary, and Diane Ruiz, a devoted 43-year-old mother and bartender, walking along a familiar boulevard in the bright Florida sun. What followed was a masterclass in forensic reconstruction, where a stolen white sedan became a rolling crime scene. Investigators would eventually strip down the vehicle's internal computer, using satellite GPS data extracted from a factory modem to map a lethal trajectory down to the exact meter. This video unravels the entire unhurried truth. From the dark, early warnings ignored by the justice system 8 months prior, to the forensic autopsies that detailed shattered ribs and tire tread marks stamped into human skin, and finally, to the disturbing modern phenomenon of digital hybridophilia that flooded Florida. Judges' chambers with love letters for a condemned killer. To understand how Wade Stephen Wilson evolved into the monster that terrorized Lee County, we must step back from the blood-soaked pavement of October 2019 and look into a history marked by escalation, theft, and a terrifying psychological detachment that was documented long before his face became a symbol of modern nightmare. Born in 1994, Wilson's early life was fractured, leading to his adoption by a loving family. Yet from an early age, an internal dissonance began to manifest. By 2013, his name began to appear regularly in Florida law enforcement databases, not for high-profile violence, but for property crimes, grand thefts, and a series of commercial burglaries that hinted at a complete lack of impulse control. In a strange twist of cultural irony, Wilson even made a brief, almost forgotten appearance in the background of the television true crime universe. He worked briefly as an informant and source for production circles, connected to alternative documentary projects, moving on the fringes of society like a ghost fascinated by the very systems designed to lock him away. But the criminalistic profile of an instrumental sadist involves a predictable, terrifying trajectory. Property damage and petty theft are often just the preliminary testing grounds for control. In February 2019, exactly 8 months before the murders, a massive systematic failure occurred in Palm Beach County 1 that would leave a survivor scarred and a predator free to hunt. A woman named Kelly Matthews encountered Wilson during this period. The interaction quickly turned into a living nightmare. Wilson isolated her, his charming facade melting away instantly to reveal a clinical, predatory malice. He lunged at her, placing his hands around her neck and applying mechanical pressure designed to induce immediate hypoxia. Matthews survived the encounter, escaping with extensive bruising, broken capillaries in her eyes, and deep psychological trauma. She went straight to the Palm Beach County authorities, recounting the terrifying details of the near-fatal strangulation, pointing directly to Wade Stephen Wilson as her attacker. Yet the case stalled. Law enforcement officials cited a lack of independent witnesses to corroborate Matthews' claims, viewing the incident through a flawed lens of interpersonal conflict rather than recognizing it as the clear behavioral signature of an escalating serial strangler. The charges were not aggressively pursued. Wilson walked out into the Florida sun, completely unprosecuted. To a criminologist, this systematic dismissal is a profound tragedy. Manual strangulation is widely recognized as one of the most significant behavioral predictors of future homicidal violence. By leaving Wilson on the streets, the system inadvertently validated his sense of absolute impunity. He now knew he could choke a woman to the brink of death and walk away unscathed. 8 months later, the clock finally ran out for the citizens of Lee County. It was the weekend of October 6, 2019. Wade Wilson was now 25 years old, drifting through the local social scenes of Fort Myers, driven by an internal, volatile mix of narcotic substance abuse and underlying psychopathic sadism that was searching for an outlet. On the night of October 6th, Wilson arrived at Buddha Live, a popular, dimly lit bar located on Clevenue in Fort Myers. The venue was crowded, filled with music, laughter, and ordinary patrons winding down their weekend. Among them was 35-year-old Christine Ann Melton, an animal lover and friendly soul who had no idea that a predator had just entered her immediate orbit. Wilson, possessed of a superficial, manipulative charm often seen in primary psychopaths, integrated himself into Melton's group. He was accompanied that night by another individual, Jason Shepard. The group drank, conversed, and eventually decided to move the gathering away from the noisy public establishment to a more private setting. Christine Melton, along with her roommate Stephanie Sailors, invited Wilson and Shepard back to their duplex home located in Cape Coral. The small group arrived in the early morning hours of October 7th. To Stephanie Sailors, Wilson appeared to be just another transient acquaintance, someone whose strange energy could be dismissed as the byproduct of a long night out. As the clock ticked past 3 a.m., the dynamics inside the duplex began to shift. Jason Shepard eventually left the residence. Stephanie Sailors, exhausted from the extended hours, retired to her own bedroom, leaving Christine Melton alone in the living area and main bedroom with Wade Stephen Wilson. It was the exact structural isolation the predator required. What happened next inside that dark bedroom is a chilling testament to instrumental malice. Forensic pathology records would later reconstruct the final terrifying moments of Christine Melton's life. While she lay in her bed, completely vulnerable and unsuspecting, Wilson moved against her with explosive, lethal violence. Dr. Thomas Coyne, the forensic pathologist who conducted the post-mortem examination, testified in meticulous, brutal detail about the physical evidence left upon Christine's body. Wilson did not use a weapon. He used his bare hands, applying a vice-like grip around her neck, initiating manual mechanical asphyxiation. The forensic analysis revealed extensive laryngeal and tracheal injuries. The internal structures of Christine's throat were systematically crushed under the weight of Wilson's hands. The medical examiner documented profound cerebral congestion caused by the complete compression of the jugular veins and carotid arteries, cutting off the vital flow of oxygen to her brain. This was not a quick, merciful death. Manual strangulation requires continuous, immense physical force sustained for several minutes after the victim loses consciousness to ensure termination. Wilson stood over her, feeling her life fade beneath his fingertips, fully conscious of the absolute destruction he was executing in the dark. Once the mechanical asphyxiation was complete and Christine Melton lay still, Wilson exhibited the classic behavioral signature of a detached, remorseless offender. He did not panic. He did not call for help. Instead, he systematically wrapped her lifeless body in the bedroom rugs, attempting to obscure the immediate visual evidence of his horrific crime. As dawn broke over Cape Coral on October 7th, Stephanie Sailors woke up inside the duplex, completely unaware that her roommate was dead just yards away. Wilson was still inside the house, moving with an eerie, calm demeanor. He stole the keys to Christine's white sedan, walked out the door, and left the residence in the victim's own vehicle. The stolen white sedan was now more than a means of escape. It had become an instrument of impending terror. Wilson drove the vehicle through the morning traffic of Lee County, a ticking time bomb behind the wheel, his psychopathic arousal amplified by the successful, undetected execution of his first murder. But his path of destruction for that morning was far from over. Where was Wade Stephen Wilson heading with the stolen car, and how long could he drive before the body inside the duplex was discovered? The answers would arrive in less than 2 hours, as Wilson targeted his next victim on a sunlit boulevard, escalating his violence to a level of physical depravity that would stun even seasoned homicide detectives. By 9 a.m. on October 7th, Wilson had arrived at a local business in Fort Myers, where his ex-girlfriend Melissa Montanez worked. The psychological momentum of the first homicide had stripped away whatever behavioral restraint he possessed. He confronted Montanez, initiating a brutal physical assault born of a desire for absolute control and dominance. Montanez survived the vicious assault, but Wilson's erratic, terrifying behavior left her running for safety. After tearing through her business, Wilson fled the scene, climbing back into Christine Melton's stolen white sedan. He crossed the bridge back into Cape Coral, his predatory focus shifting from personal vendettas to random opportunistic predation. At approximately 10:40 a.m., Wilson was driving down Santa Barbara Boulevard, a major traffic artery in Cape Coral. The sun was high, and the street was active with ordinary citizens going about their daily routines. Walking along the sidewalk near a local elementary school was 43-year-old Diane Ruiz, a well-loved bartender walking to her second job. Diane Ruiz was an anchor for her family, a mother to her sons, and engaged to be married. Her walk down Santa Barbara Boulevard should have been entirely uneventful, but as she moved along the roadside, the white sedan pulled up beside her. Wilson rolled down the window, utilizing his superficial charisma to execute a classic predatory ruse. He asked her for directions. What precise words were exchanged remains known only to the killer, but investigators believe Wilson successfully lured or forced Diane Ruiz into the interior of the stolen vehicle. The choice to enter that car would instantly seal her fate. Within moments, the sanctuary of the public street vanished, replaced by the claustrophobic terror of a predator's rolling trap. Inside the vehicle, Wilson immediately turned violent. As the car sped away from the safety of Santa Barbara Boulevard, he attacked Diane Ruiz, just as he had done with Kelly Matthews months prior and Christine Melton hours earlier. Wilson used his physical mass to initiate manual strangulation, wrapping his hands around Diane's throat while maintaining control of the speeding sedan. Wilson drove the vehicle toward a vacant, overgrown lot located behind a Sam's Club commercial establishment in Cape Coral. This desolate stretch of land, hidden from the immediate view of the main roads, was chosen to complete his dark design. He pushed Diane Ruiz out of the vehicle, but her nightmare was about to escalate to an unprecedented level of savagery. Finding that Diane Ruiz was still breathing after the manual strangulation, Wilson's psychopathic sadism transformed the stolen sedan into a crushing weapon. He did not merely run her over to ensure death. He engaged in a repetitive, monstrous cycle of destruction, driving the heavy vehicle over her body 10 to 20 times. The medical examiner's autopsy tables would later reveal the catastrophic reality of this assault. Diane Ruiz's body suffered extensive internal crush injuries, including the rupturing of vital internal organs and multiple shattered ribs. Most chillingly, the forensic team documented severe tire tread marks directly stamped into her dermis. leaving an indelible physical signature of the vehicle used to destroy her. Wilson left Diane Ruiz's body concealed within the tall weeds of the vacant lot, treating a human life with the same disregard as discarded refuse. He then drove away in the blood-stained white sedan. The vehicle's interior upholstery and steering wheel were now saturated with forensic evidence biological material that would later serve as an unassailable cornerstone of the prosecution's case. With 2 women dead in a span of less than 12 hours, Wilson's behavior became increasingly erratic and hypervocal. He committed a residential burglary at the home of Fanny Amlin, seeking resources to maintain his flight. But instead of hiding, his psychopathic narcissism compelled him to call the one person who could truly understand the scale of his descent, his biological father. Wade Wilson placed a frantic, boastful call to Stephen Testaseca. During this conversation, which Testaseca would later recount under oath with palpable horror, Wilson did not speak with fear or regret. Instead, he detailed the executions with chilling detachment, delivering the infamous phrase that he had run Diane Ruiz over until she looked like spaghetti.
Tell you he did when he realized she's still breathing.
He said he got back in the car and ran her over until she looked like spaghetti.
Stephen Testaseca recognized instantly that his son was an active lethal threat to anyone in his path. He made the immediate, agonizing decision to contact the Cape Coral Police Department, passing on the graphic confession. This critical communication sparked an immediate, high-stakes manhunt across Lee County, as law enforcement raced to track down the white sedan. By the morning of October 8, 2019, the net was closing in. Wilson, driving the stolen car, arrived at an establishment called Mateo Graphics in Fort Myers. He was barefoot, shirtless, wearing blood-stained sweatpants, and radiating a volatile, desperate energy. Joshua Lukic, the owner of the business, took one look at the disheveled, bleeding man and recognized the immense danger. Lukic acted with immense calm under pressure. He surreptitiously contacted 911, alerting dispatchers to Wilson's exact location and physical state. Within minutes, tactical units from the Cape Coral and Fort Myers police departments swarmed the vicinity of Mateo Graphics, executing a high-risk takedown under the assumption that the suspect was armed and highly dangerous. The raw police bodycam footage captures the tense moments of the arrest. Wilson offered no significant physical resistance, shifting instantly from a manic predator into a completely flat, compliant detainee. He was handcuffed and placed into the rear of a transport cruiser, his hands smeared with dirt and dried biological material that the forensic units would soon document. Following his high-risk arrest, Wilson was brought to the interrogation rooms of the Cape Coral Police Department. For over 2 hours, detectives sat across from the 25-year-old suspect, attempting to probe the psychological landscape behind the double homicide. What they encountered was a textbook manifestation of psychopathic emotional flatness. Wilson sat slouching in his chair, answering questions with a monotone voice, completely devoid of defensive posturing, panic, or sorrow. He discussed the events of October 7th as if recounting a mundane driving route, completely detached from the human suffering he had caused. This clinical indifference marked him clearly as an instrumental sadist who viewed human beings as mere objects. While Wilson sat in the interrogation room, forensic teams were executing search warrants on Christine Melton's duplex and the vacant lot behind Sam's Club. The crime scenes were a stark, horrific contrast to the suspect's calm demeanor. Within hours, the physical evidence began to pile up, creating an airtight forensic web from which Wilson would never escape. The legal process would prove to be a long, agonizing journey for the victims' families, spanning nearly 5 years before Wilson would finally face a jury of his peers. During this pretrial detention period, a terrifying physical transformation began to take place inside the walls of the Lee County Jail, one that would shock the public when he finally re-emerged. Wade Wilson chose to use his skin as an external manifestation of his internal chaos. He allowed jailhouse artists to tattoo his face with explicit Nazi symbology, including large swastikas beneath his eyes, iron crosses, and a dark, jagged line carved across his jawline to simulate a permanent, demonic grin. It was a calculated transformation designed to project absolute defiance. When the trial finally commenced in June 2024, under Lee County Circuit Judge Nicholas Thompson, Wilson refused to wear trial makeup to cover the offensive tattoos. He entered the courtroom with an arrogant posture, presenting the visage of a monster directly to the jury. The media and the grieving families who sat in the gallery just rose behind him. The prosecution, led by State Attorneys Andreas Gardner and Sarah Miller, presented a devastatingly precise case. They did not rely merely on the emotional weight of the tragedy. They anchored their arguments in the unassailable reality of modern forensic science, transforming the courtroom into a laboratory of criminalistic truth. The strategic core of the forensic evidence lay within the stolen white sedan. The state introduced comprehensive DNA analysis, showing that the interior upholstery, the steering wheel, and the door handles were heavily contaminated with the biological profile of Diane Ruiz, proving her presence and the violent struggle that occurred inside the vehicle's cabin. Furthermore, the prosecution utilized satellite GPS data extracted directly from the internal factory modem of Melton's vehicle. Technicians mapped Wilson's precise predatory path down to the meter, showing the exact moments the car stopped on Santa Barbara Boulevard, its transit to the vacant lot behind Sam's Club, and the repetitive forward and backward tracking movements matching the runover sequence. Throughout the presentations of these horrific details, Wilson's demeanor remained chillingly consistent. He smiled, smirked, and leaned back casually in his chair, whispering mockingly to his defense counsel. Cameras caught him looking directly into the media lenses, completely unrepentant, as if the entire proceeding was an entertainment piece designed solely for his amusement. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning a verdict of guilty on all counts, including 2 counts of first-degree murder. During the penalty phase, the scale of his psychopathy was evaluated, with the jury ultimately returning a powerful recommendation for the ultimate penalty, ordering his setting the stage for the final judicial sentencing. On August 27, 2024, Judge Nicholas Thompson delivered the final judgment. The courtroom was packed with media and families holding their breath. Judge Thompson, reviewing the aggravating factors of extraordinary cruelty and calculated premeditation, sentenced Wade Stephen Wilson to death.
The totality of the circumstances warrants that the defendant, Wade Stephen Wilson, be sentenced to death for each count of first-degree murder. Accordingly, it is ordered and adjudged that the defendant...
The clinical resolution of the case on death row marked the end of a legal battle, but it opened a darker, deeply unsettling chapter in modern digital culture. As the details of Wilson's crimes and his tattooed, defiant image spread across social media platforms, an extraordinary and disturbing phenomenon began to manifest in the digital space. Thousands of messages, letters, and online fan edits began to flood the internet, driven by a phenomenon known to criminologists as hybridophilia, the profound, pathological attraction to individuals who have committed catastrophic acts of violence. Wade Wilson's Securus prison account was flooded with thousands of dollars in donations from private individuals worldwide. Most disturbingly, Judge Nicholas Thompson's chambers received hundreds of letters from women residing in locations as far away as California, France, and Germany, begging the court to spare the life of a double murderer based entirely on a romanticized, aesthetic appreciation of his physical appearance and rebellious posturing, completely detached from the reality of his victims.
make you address the court if you don't want to. So it is a decision that's solely left up to you if you want to address the court or not.
Not today. Later, when I come back, I will. Today,
Okay.
no, I won't.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
This digital insanity stands in stark, offensive contrast to the clinical reality left behind on the autopsy tables of Lee County. It completely minimizes the profound, shattering grief of Zane Romero, Diane Ruiz's son, and the families of Christine Melton, whose lives were permanently broken by an unrepentant, psychopathic sadist who offered nothing but smirks to the world. We read every single comment left by our community, and we want to hear your perspective on this dark case. How do you feel modern social media algorithms feed into and amplify dangerous clinical disorders like hybridophilia, turning monsters into viral aesthetics? Share your theories, thoughts, or deep dive case requests below. The thin line between human civilization and primeval apex predation is far more fragile than we dare to admit, hidden behind ordinary facades and stolen cars. Subscribe to The Human Files to ensure the names of Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz are never forgotten, while the monster's face is left to dissolve in the shadows of death row. Stay safe, stay alive.